Welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown, where each time we meet, we run down the IT news of the week for a variable degree of snarkiness. I'm your host, Stephen Foskett. Joining me as co-host is the darkest of Dark Avengers himself, Senor Max Mortellaro. Welcome to the show, Max.
Hello.
So, Max, let's dive right in with news or nah, since we have quite a few stories today. First up, news came out today that 128 Networks, which is a familiar name to those of you who follow Tech Field Day, which I hope everybody does. We went to Massachusetts for a special Tech Field Day event last year, and we've been following 128 pretty closely. Well, news just came in that Juniper Networks is buying the company. Juniper, of course, is also a familiar and friendly Field Day company. What do you think, Max? Is this news for the industry, or is this just Juniper adding a little bit more SD-WAN tech?
Well, you know that SD-WAN is not really my cup of coffee, right? But something's brewing on the Juniper side because they purchased Mist. Now they're purchasing 128, and it seems that they're really beefing up their offering, their solution in terms of adding AIOps capabilities and AI-backed stuff. But that's not something I'm really the expert there. So maybe you can chime in and say a couple words on that, what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah. Well, 128 was pretty impressive stuff. I've got to say, the delegates came out of that Field Day presentation with a lot to say. And if you're interested, you can find it at Tech Field Day. Just search for 128 in the Tech Field Day website, and you'll find the whole day of presentations there. Lots of deep dive into the technology. Now, Juniper already has some solid, SD-WAN technology, and the 128 Networks edition. I think this is a case of, as we often see in technology, where companies, they buy more and more technology to kind of fill in, little gaps. Juniper, interestingly enough, is making a tremendous play here in the networking space, and I've been super impressed by what they've been doing with their AI-powered networking, the whole Marvis technology from Mist. And so I'm actually pretty psyched to see what this is. I'm not sure it's really news yet, but it could be once they take over.
Okay. So another thing, Stephen, is the Raspberry Pi Foundation has announced the long-awaited compute module version for the Pi 4. And this brings not just a new faster quad-core CPU, but it also brings a totally different form factor. So, and on top of that, it's also bringing PCI Express and NVMe storage. So do you think it makes it more interesting, less interesting?
Absolutely. And I got to say, shout out to my good friend, my internet buddy, Jeff Geerling, who did an awesome write-up of this thing. Love you, Jeff, man. You're the best. Between his reviews of storage for Pis and SD cards and USB drives and stuff, and now this, it's awesome. Anyway, the Pi 4 is really interesting because, instead of being that sort of dim form factor of the previous compute modules, this thing uses like board-to-board connectors. And so, I've already seen the Turing Pi 4 prototype announced yesterday, I think. They actually just sent me a press release, too. Basically, they're mating these board connectors to a DIMM style thing that they can then put into the Turing Pi chassis. When I first saw that form factor, I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, what are they thinking? But now that I'm looking at it, I actually think that it makes a lot of sense because you can still make a DIMM form factor, but you could theoretically use the compute module in all sorts of other ways with the board-to-board connections. So let's set that aside. The other thing that Jeff Geerling reports that's really interesting is just how many different things are packed into this thing. This is by far the most advanced Pi ever made. It's got Wi-Fi, it's got fast eMMC, it's got PCI Express exposed. Honestly, the only thing it doesn't have is USB 3, but of course that can be solved using a PCIe card. So honestly, this thing is killer. The numbers that he's reporting, the things that I'm seeing from it. I mean, this is not your dad's Pi. This thing is pretty awesome. Are you a Pi user yourself, Max?
I've got one Pi over here, which is doing a kind of smart mirror stuff. I've got one in stock, so let's say I'm planning to do something with that, maybe some network filtering, Pi hole or something like that.
Yeah, I imagine this faster Pi might be a way to move forward for you. So it's exciting stuff. Anyway, check out the link in the notes here.
So I think we should really get talking about what VMware was doing with Project Monterey. They announced that at VMworld, and we were all kind of excited to hear about these smart NICs, which can offload some workloads to process data directly. And one thing that they were doing was to partner with Pensando, with Mellanox, I think NVIDIA as well, and Nebulon when they made the announcement at VMworld. I mean, the virtual VMworld. And now it seems that Intel is also in the game. So what do you think about Intel, how it differs from what the others are doing?
Yeah, I think this is important. There's been a lot of press, a lot of ink spilled on Project Monterey and the exciting things that VMware is doing there. I mean, essentially, the TLDR here for people who don't know what's going on there is Intel is bringing. Uh, there's like 5 different names, DPUs or whatever, but let's just think of them as like super duper network interface cards. So basically, it's a network interface with processing power, and it runs an operating system. In fact, it apparently runs ESXi, at least for the Pensando card. And basically the card is offloading some of the processing of some of the network processing and relieving the host CPU. This is not a new idea. I mean, we've had smart NICs for a long, long time. We've had NIC offloads and storage HBA offloads for a long time. But it's essentially that, except like way more so. So instead of being like anemic little processors that could do like checksums or something, these are full on, CPUs that can do real work and have real power. And, that's been something quite impressive. So you've got Pensando, which presented at Field Day. So if you want to learn more about Pensando, Nebulon also presented at Field Day. You can learn a lot more about their card. Those two are competing absolutely in this space. And then you have, as you mentioned, Mellanox. So NVIDIA recently acquired Mellanox, and the word is that basically they acquired them for this technology. This gives NVIDIA a very powerful entry into the data center. And these things are super popular. So Amazon is already using these things as part of AWS. And now VMware is here promising that in the future, they're going to roll out SmartNIC support as well. From what I hear, Intel was a little bit late to the party, which is surprising because most of these, or at least the Pensando one, runs a language called P4, which is a sort of a programming language that allows you to, configure the NIC and program the NIC. That came from Intel's subsidiary Barefoot Networks and Nick McEwen, who I believe came up with that. But anyway, Intel bought Barefoot. Barefoot had some really impressive P4-based NIC technology. But the interesting thing to me, and I'm not sure that this is the story, but Barefoot and thus Intel always kind of looked at it from the network facing inward. In other words, how can we extend the network into the server? Whereas VMware, not unsurprisingly, looks at it the other way. They're thinking like, how can I extend the server into the network? And fundamentally, if you look at these Intel offerings, it kind of looks like Intel's not sure like which direction they're going. So basically, Intel has introduced 2 cards, which again, wait, what? They've got an FPGA-based card, and then they've got a that has primarily as an FPGA, so that you can reprogram it and do some dynamic workloads. They also have a SmartNIC that has a Xeon D processor in it. The FPGA card is more, kind of network inward, whereas the Xeon D based one is definitely Intel's answer to what a lot of these companies are doing. But it seems a little puzzling. I mean, it's quite a card. But from what I'm hearing from insiders who've used it, it's more a component than it is a solution. In other words, it has a lot of power, a lot of capability, but what are you going to do with it? And it seems a little funky to think that you've got a Xeon on a NIC card. Max, have you been following these things at all? And what do you think of my take, or what's your take?
I've been following it also kind of a peripherally. The last time we kind of talked about that was when we did the last rundown together. Uh, what I would say here, I think I would tend to agree with your view on that. What I'm a bit more concerned is not that much about the technology itself or its applications, its validity, about what's going on at Intel in general. Yeah, and I mean we're going to talk about that a bit later, but it seems that I don't know. It seems there's some floating, a bit of confusion, so it's kind of weird for me somehow.
Yeah, I just don't know what to make of the Intel cards. They're certainly impressive. I mean, I have to say, Intel has amazing FPGA technology. The Xeon D is a wonderful processor. The barefoot technology is tremendous. Intel has some super smart people, but I think it's safe to say that from the outside looking in, um, Pensando kind of scooped uh, NVIDIA and Nebulon in terms of the press coup from VMworld.
Hmm.
And that's a real surprise, especially considering that Intel is, such a giant company, NVIDIA is such a giant company. Pensando got a lot of attention out of that. So it's kind of
Hmm.
interesting. So let's move forward before it's too late here, Max. We're running up against the hour. The US Justice Department just announced that they filed an antitrust suit against Google, alleging that the company could use its market leading position to block other companies. Uh, in the US, obviously, the political situation is weird, and politicians are complaining about all social media and Google about censorship and so on. How is this story playing outside the US?
Well, I would say first of all, Google has always been under scrutiny here in Europe, and especially in the European Union. So while there's no kind of antitrust, let's say whatever lawsuit going on at the moment, they've been part of some lawsuits. I think in 2018 they got fined because again they're abusing their dominant position on the market. So I would just say that probably it is no news at the moment. We are probably looking here what's going on in the US because, as you know, most of the governments are kind of looking with a bit of worry what the big fours are doing, not just Google, but of course Amazon, Facebook, and I forgot which one is the other GFA, but whatever. So I would probably stop it here so we can cover the last story, which I think is probably the most exciting and the most important. So very big news hit yesterday, as you say, long awaited, and SK hynix finalized the deal to purchase Intel's NAND business. So that's going to be flash and SSD actually. That means that Intel is going to exit the probably low margin NAND business, and they're going to retain the obtained 3D crosspoint memory. So what does it mean here for Intel, for SK Hynix, and the rest of the flash industry?
Yeah, this is big news, and this is something that I've been following really closely. Obviously, I'm thoroughly excited about storage. This is my bag. So a little background. So I mean, Intel has gotten themselves into all sorts of markets over the years, including flash memory, but also, I mean, DRAM, and I mean, Intel's been in all sorts of markets over the years. And I think that one thing that we have to know about Intel is that Intel's strategy has always been we're going to develop technologies that are, obviously, silicon, computing related, but every one of their technologies serves the goal of selling more CPUs in more places. And I think that if you understand that about Intel, then you understand all you need to know about Intel. Intel's job, they've got the marquee product, which is the CPUs, and that's high margin, high value, mega bucks product. Everything else they do is designed to help support that core product. So Intel has walked away from market after market, even when people scratched their heads and said, "Hey, how come they don't want to be in the DRAM market anymore?" Well, the answer is it was commoditized. There was valid, suppliers of it, and Intel just didn't care anymore. They didn't want a low market DRAM business, and the same thing is happening here. Essentially, Intel developed some solid flash memory, NAND flash memory chips. Good stuff. Intel became a pretty solid player in the space, especially with hyperscalers and in the enterprise selling SSDs. And but the problem is, it's not really great business when you're Intel because although it's profitable, and it's growing and things are looking good. It's just not what they wanted to do. They want to sell more processors and they want higher margins. And so Intel walked away again, and they did it in a way that got them, $8 billion now and $2 more billion in 2025. And, that's kind of what Intel does. So I think the Intel part of this story is there's no story. It's just Intel doing Intel. As long as we understand that they did retain 3D XPoint and they're going to still try to push, the whole Optane thing forward. The more interesting thing to me is what it means for the flash memory business. So essentially, flash memory just lost a major competitor. If you look at the pie chart in this link that I'm sharing, it's clear that this market is consolidating. But another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at this pie chart is that two of these companies are actually the same thing, sort of. So you've got our friends over at Kioxia and Western Digital. They each have 16% of the market or something, but that's the same fab. And so that's basically two owners of the same fab. And so, married filing jointly, they would have a third of the market, which means that we now have two tremendous competitors in this space, Samsung and the Western Digital Kioxia fab, and a number of other strong competitors as well. I think the only interesting thing about this story is, frankly, that it didn't go to a Chinese company, because Intel manufactures this stuff in China. China really is desperately trying to compete in the area of flash memory, and they just lost the opportunity to buy another one. But I guess that's politics, right? What do you think, Max?
I think it's politics, as you say, right? And I totally share your analysis, and even the point of view, because I was talking about that yesterday as well in the video, and there we were talking more about the fact that Intel wants to focus on high margin, innovative products. But if you tie into the CPU element, as you said, then it becomes all crystal clear. So the question is, and that's maybe for someone else to answer, is what is going to happen after XPoint? Are they going to work on some new kind of innovative memory? And who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? And I think the only thing that we can count on is that Intel's going to do what Intel needs to do to continue to support sale of high value, high margin, chips that kind of drive the core of their product line. Well, thanks a lot, Max. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us today on the Rundown. So everyone watching, please do remember that the Rundown is available as a podcast as well as live on YouTube. You can find it in your favorite podcatcher. You can also find them posted on Facebook as well as YouTube, and you can go to gestaltit.com for show notes as well, links and so on. We'll be back next Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific, to talk about the IT news of this week. But until then, for myself, for Max Mortellaro, for Abby Murphy, for Tom Hollingsworth, and the rest of us here at the Gestalt IT crew, here's wishing you and yours a super sparkly day.